The crystalline spires of the Galactic Military Academy pierced the violet sky of Nexus Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside the grand simulation chamber, Commander Aristrix, a towering Ventaxian with iridescent scales and 4 arms, surveyed the assembled cadets with all 3 of his primary eyes. His secondary eyes remained fixed on a particular group that stood apart from the others, the humans. This year's graduating class shows exceptional promise, he addressed his fellow instructor, Admiral Crixer, whose gelatinous form rippled with patterns of bioluminescence. Though I must confess, I have reservations about including the Deathworlders in the Centennial simulation. The annual war games were prestigious enough, but the Centennial simulation was different. It was the most complex military exercise in known space, a test that typically ran for 10 galactic standard years. No species had ever completed it in less than 8. Among the human cadets stood Specialist Maya Rodriguez, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation braid, and beside her, Technical Officer Damien Walsh, whose cybernetic eye whirred quietly as it processed the chamber's holographic displays. Their fellow cadet, Strategic Commander Nix Blackwood, maintained a carefully neutral expression that betrayed none of the excitement coursing through their veins. "Attention, participants," Commander Aristrix's voice boomed through the chamber. The Centennial simulation represents the pinnacle of military strategic testing. You will face scenarios spanning a decade of potential conflict, requiring mastery of resource management, tactical deployment, and diplomatic finesse. Maya caught Damien's slight smirk and nudged him with her elbow. They had spent months preparing for this, studying not just military tactics, but the psychological profiles of every known spacefaring species. The aliens had no idea what was coming. Each team will command a simulated fleet and colonial network, Aristrix continued. Your objective is to achieve galactic supremacy through whatever means you deem appropriate, within the established parameters of civilized warfare. Nix raised their hand, their augmented vocal cords producing the perfect frequencies to catch the commander's attention. "Sir, could you clarify what constitutes civilized warfare in this context?" The commander's scales shifted to a shade of annoyed purple. The simulation follows the guidelines of galactic conflict, established by the Consortium of Civilized Species. Naturally, this excludes the more primitive tactics historically employed by younger races. "Of course, sir," Nix replied, their tone carefully respectful. "We wouldn't want to upset anyone's sensibilities." The humans took their positions at their designated console, a stark contrast to the elaborate control centers of their alien counterparts. While other species required multiple operators and neural interfaces, the human station was remarkably simple: 3 chairs, 3 holographic displays, and a single quantum processing core. "Operation Thunderclap is a go," Maya whispered to her teammates as they settled in. "Let's show them why Earth's military history makes for such interesting reading." The chamber's ambient lighting dimmed as the simulation prepared to begin. Thousands of star systems materialized in the central display, a galaxy waiting to be conquered. Admiral Crix's bioluminescence pulsed with anticipation as she initiated the countdown. Simulation commencing in 3, 2, 1. The other teams burst into immediate action, their appendages flying over control surfaces, neural links humming with activity. The humans, however, sat back in their chairs, seemingly relaxed. Commander Aristrix's scales rippled with concern as he observed their apparent lack of engagement. What he couldn't see was the rapid-fire exchange of hand signals between the human cadets, or the way Damien's cybernetic eye was processing terabytes of tactical data per second. They had no intention of playing this game by the established rules. After all, humanity hadn't survived on a Deathworld by being predictable. As the first simulated day began to unfold, Maya allowed herself a small smile. In just a few hours, the galaxy would learn why humans had earned their reputation as the most dangerous species in known space, not through superior technology or physical strength, but through their unparalleled ability to turn any situation to their advantage. The game was about to change, and the Galactic Military Academy would never be the same. The first hour of the simulation passed in what appeared to be complete inaction from the human station. Commander Aristrix had visited their console 3 times, each instance growing more agitated than the last. The Ventaxian scales had shifted through various shades of concern before settling on a mottled pattern of anxiety and confusion. "Cadet Rodriguez," he chittered, "your team has yet to make a single traditional fleet movement. Are your controls malfunctioning?" Maya glanced up from her datapad, her expression serene. "Everything's working perfectly, Commander. We're exactly where we need to be." Damien's cybernetic eye whirred as he monitored multiple data streams simultaneously. His fingers danced across the holographic interface in short, precise bursts, each movement carefully calculated. To the casual observer, it might have looked like he was playing a game. In reality, he was orchestrating what would soon be known as the greatest upset in simulation history. "Quantum packets deployed," he murmured. "Ready when you are, Nix." Nix Blackwood's augmented vocal cords hummed with barely contained excitement. "Beginning Operation Thunderclap in 3, 2, 1. The main display erupted in a cascade of alerts. Across the simulated galaxy, thousands of automated trading vessels, previously tagged as non-combat entities, simultaneously activated hidden protocols. The humans had spent their first hour quietly uploading specialized programming to the civilian merchant fleet that every other team had ignored. "What is the meaning of this?" Admiral Crix's bioluminescence flashed in patterns of alarm. "Those are civilian vessels." "Were civilian vessels," Maya corrected politely. According to Section 47B of the simulation parameters, any vessel can be requisitioned for military purposes during times of active conflict. We simply requisitioned them all at once. The other teams scrambled to respond, but they were already too late. Each converted merchant ship had begun broadcasting specialized signal patterns, creating a galaxy-wide network of confusion. Military communications were drowning in a sea of false signals, sensor readings became unreliable, and automated defense systems started triggering false alarms. "This is unprecedented." Commander Aristrix's scales had turned an almost translucent shade of shock. "The guidelines of galactic conflict clearly state." "With respect, Commander," Nix interrupted, their voice carrying that particular human tone that somehow managed to be both polite and predatory. "The guidelines speak to the conduct of warfare once it's declared. They say nothing about the methods used to achieve tactical advantage before the first shot is fired." On the main display, the galaxy had become a chaos of movement. The merchant-turned-military vessels were now executing seemingly random jump patterns, creating a massive web of disruption that left the conventional fleets of other species paralyzed with indecision. "Phase 1 complete," Damien reported, his cybernetic eye glowing with satisfaction. "Initiating Phase 2. Maya tapped her console, and suddenly, the converted merchant ships began broadcasting a very specific message across all frequencies. It was a simple declaration, but one that would change the course of the simulation. "Attention all systems. This is an emergency broadcast. A Class X quantum anomaly has been detected. All civilian and military vessels are advised to power down non-essential systems and await further instructions from designated safety coordinators." "You can't do this," protested the Auxilian team leader, their tentacles writhing in distress. "This is psychological warfare." "Actually," Maya replied, pulling up the simulation rulebook with a flick of her wrist, "it's crisis management. We're simply helping to coordinate the galaxy's response to a potential threat. The fact that our ships are the only ones properly shielded against this theoretical quantum anomaly is merely fortunate timing." As system after system complied with the emergency broadcast, effectively surrendering control to the human-commanded merchant fleet, Commander Aristrix watched in horrified fascination. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, hadn't moved a single military vessel, and yet they had already achieved what would have taken other species years of conventional warfare. "Remarkable," Admiral Crixa pulsed quietly. They've turned the entire civilian infrastructure into both a weapon and a shield. Maya shared a knowing look with her teammates. They were only getting started. As the second hour of the simulation approached, the galaxy map had transformed into a fascinating display of human ingenuity. While other species' military vessels remained effectively paralyzed by the communications chaos, the converted merchant fleet had established control over key trading routes and infrastructure hubs. Status report. Nix commanded that augmented vocals carrying a hint of satisfaction. 78% of major systems have powered down their defenses in response to our quantum anomaly warning. Damien replied, his cybernetic eye processing the incoming data streams. The remaining 22% are about to receive a more convincing argument. Maya's fingers flew across her console, implementing the next phase of their strategy, initiating Operation Pandora. The simulation's main display suddenly flickered, and every screen in the chamber began showing the same image. A heavily redacted document with just enough visible text to be terrifying. It appeared to be a classified report about the effects of the supposed quantum anomaly, complete with fabricated but convincing scientific data. Admiral Crick says gelatinous form rippled with concern. This cannot be legitimate research data. Oh, it's not, Maya confirmed cheerfully. But it's based on actual theoretical physics papers from Earth's archives. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it couldn't happen, right? The remaining resistance systems began powering down their defenses one by one as the classified report circulated through their networks. The human team hadn't just created a false threat, they had created a convincing scientific basis for it, playing on the galaxy's respect for academic authority. This is absurd, declared the Helaxian team leader, their crystalline structure vibrating with indignation. You're conquering the galaxy with bureaucracy and academic papers. Among other things, Nix replied with a slight smile. Damien, I believe it's time for Phase 3. Damien nodded, his cybernetic eye glowing brighter as he initiated the next sequence. Across the simulated galaxy, the powered-down systems suddenly found their defense grids coming back online, but not under their control. The humans had used the emergency shutdown to upload their own command protocols. While everyone was worried about the quantum anomaly, Maya explained to the stunned observers, we were actually implementing a galaxy-wide security update. Standard emergency protocols, you understand. Can't be too careful with those quantum anomalies. Commander Aristrix's scales had taken on a pale, almost translucent hue. You've turned their own defense systems against them without firing a single shot. Not against them, Nix corrected. We're protecting them. It just happens that we're now the ones deciding what they need protection from. The holographic display showed the true masterpiece of their strategy, a perfectly coordinated network of civilian ships, defense systems, and infrastructure, all operating under human control. They had effectively conquered half the galaxy through nothing more than clever paperwork and creative interpretation of emergency protocols. But what about actual military engagement? One of the alien instructors demanded. Surely you can't win a war simulation without combat. Maya's smile widened. Why fight a war when you can simply redefine the conditions of peace? After all, we're not conquering anyone. We're implementing a unified defense initiative for the good of all species. The fact that we're the ones implementing it is merely administrative detail. As if to punctuate her point, the converted merchant ships began broadcasting a new message. Attention all systems. Phase 1 of the galaxy-wide security initiative has been successfully implemented. Thank you for your cooperation. Please stand by for Phase 2 of mandatory safety protocols. The other teams watched in helpless fascination as their carefully planned military strategies became irrelevant. The humans hadn't just changed the rules of the game, they had convinced everyone they were playing a different game entirely. I believe, Nix announced with quiet satisfaction, this would be an excellent time to discuss the terms of galaxy-wide security cooperation. After all, we're all in this together, aren't we? The simulation chamber had descended into controlled chaos. Various species representatives were frantically consulting their rulebooks, searching for some regulation that would invalidate the human strategy. Commander Aristrix and Admiral Crixer found themselves mediating heated debates about the definition of warfare itself. Initiating Phase 4, Damien announced, his cybernetic eye pulsing with calculations. Operation Butterfly Effect is go. Across the simulated galaxy, seemingly random malfunctions began occurring in non-critical systems. Environmental controls would fluctuate briefly before stabilizing. Communications would experience momentary delays. Power grids would show minor surges. "What are you doing now?" demanded the Proxian representative, their crystalline form vibrating with frustration. "System diagnostics," Maya replied innocently. "Standard procedure during a security crisis. We need to ensure all infrastructure is operating within acceptable parameters." But these weren't random malfunctions at all. Each diagnostic test was carefully choreographed to create a pattern of controlled chaos that would only be visible when viewed from a specific analytical perspective, one that only the humans were employing. "Quantum anomaly simulation complete," Nix reported. "Beginning data analysis broadcast." The main display filled with streams of complex data, allegedly collected during the system-wide diagnostics. The information was real, but the conclusions drawn from it were masterfully crafted to support the humans' narrative. As you can see, Maya addressed the chamber, standing to deliver what would later be known as the checkmate speech. "Our comprehensive analysis reveals concerning patterns in the galaxy's infrastructure. The data suggests a critical vulnerability in the current decentralized management approach." The holographic display shifted to show a series of projections, each more alarming than the last. The humans had turned the entire simulation into a massive data-gathering operation, and now they were using that data to justify their next move. These projections indicate an 87.3% probability of catastrophic system failure within the next 5 standard years, unless immediate action is taken, Damien added, his cybernetic eye projecting additional data streams. "Fortunately, we've already begun implementing the necessary solutions." Commander Aristrix's scales shifted through patterns of disbelief. "You're not just taking control of military assets, you're restructuring the entire galactic civilization." "We prefer to call it optimization," Nix responded smoothly. "After all, we've demonstrated clear empirical evidence for the necessity of these changes. Would any responsible species ignore such compelling data?" The simulation's timeline accelerated as the human strategy unfolded. Their security initiative had evolved into a complete reorganization of galactic society, all justified by data they had gathered during their manufactured crisis. Systems that might have resisted military occupation found themselves voluntarily adopting human-designed protocols and infrastructure changes. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Crixer pulsed, her bioluminescence displaying patterns never before recorded. "They're not just winning the war, they're making the very concept of opposition obsolete." Maya stepped forward again, her expression serious. "We're approaching a critical juncture in galactic development. The data clearly shows that continued resistance to standardization presents an unacceptable risk to civilian populations. Therefore, we're implementing Phase 5, the Unity Protocol." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs as the implications became clear. The humans hadn't just found a way to win the war, they had fundamentally changed the parameters of victory itself. Through a combination of manufactured crisis, data manipulation, and strategic restructuring, they had created a situation where surrender wasn't just the most logical choice, it was the only choice that could be justified to civilian populations. "You can't possibly expect this to work in a real conflict," one of the alien instructors protested. "No species would willingly submit to such comprehensive control." "On the contrary," Nix replied, pulling up historical data from Earth's archives, "we have countless examples of populations accepting dramatic societal changes when presented with compelling evidence of necessity. The key isn't force, it's narrative control." As if to prove their point, the simulation displayed the results of recent public opinion surveys from across the galaxy, surveys that had been subtly influenced by the very infrastructure changes the humans had implemented. The data showed overwhelming support for continued security measures and optimization protocols. The humans had turned the entire galaxy into a self-perpetuating system that validated its own existence. The simulation had reached a critical point that no one, except perhaps the human team, had anticipated. The holographic galaxy map now displayed a unified network of systems, all operating under what the humans had dubbed the Harmony Protocol. Traditional military victory had become irrelevant in the face of their comprehensive societal restructuring. Remarkable, Admiral Crixer pulsed, her bioluminescence forming complex patterns of academic fascination. They've achieved total dominance without a single traditional battle. Maya stood at her console, orchestrating the final phase of their strategy. Initiating Operation Looking Glass, she announced, her voice carrying across the now silent chamber. The main display transformed into a vast network of interconnected data streams. Each point represented a system that had been optimized under human guidance, but now they were serving a new purpose, creating a self-aware galactic network. You see, Damien explained, his cybernetic eye projecting supplementary data. While everyone was focused on our security measures and optimization protocols, we were actually building something much more significant. Every diagnostic test, every system upgrade, every infrastructure modification was adding another piece to a much larger puzzle. The network began to pulse with a rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat. Systems that had been standardized under human protocols were now synchronizing in ways that created emergent properties nobody had predicted, nobody except the human team. The simulation parameters, Nix added, that augmented vocals carrying a note of triumph, never specified what constituted victory. They only required achieving galactic supremacy. We simply chose to redefine what supremacy means. Commander Aristrix's scales had taken on a color never before seen in his species, a mixture of awe and terror. What exactly have you done? Maya's smile was both proud and slightly predatory. We've created a self-sustaining system of mutual interdependence. Every attempt to dismantle our protocols would now result in cascade failures across multiple sectors. The galaxy has effectively become a single organism, with humanity as its central nervous system. The simulation's artificial intelligence struggled to process this unprecedented situation. It had been programmed to evaluate military victories, political conquests, and economic dominance. But the humans had created something that transcended all these categories. Watch this, Damien said, inputting a series of commands. Across the galaxy, systems began sharing resources automatically, optimizing trade routes without direct input, and coordinating defensive measures as a single entity. We've turned the entire galaxy into a unified system that operates according to human principles of efficiency and cooperation. But that's not warfare, protested one of the alien instructors. This is evolution, Nix finished. We didn't conquer the galaxy, we helped it evolve. Every species' strength has been preserved and enhanced, just within a framework that ensures human principles guide their application. The simulation's timeline accelerated as the implications became clear. Attempts by holdout systems to resist the new order found themselves facing not military retaliation, but economic and social isolation. The humans had created a situation where cooperation with their system was the only logical choice. The beauty of it, Maya explained, her voice carrying a hint of pride, is that it's entirely self-perpetuating. Even if humanity disappeared tomorrow, the systems we've put in place would continue functioning, continuing to optimize, continuing to evolve. We haven't just won the war, we've made war itself obsolete. The simulation's processors reached their limit trying to calculate the long-term implications of this strategy. With a series of elegant chimes, the program declared an unprecedented result. Simulation objective achieved. Victory condition, transcendent. Admiral Crix's form rippled with patterns indicating deep thought. In all my centuries of military education, I've never seen anything like this. You've turned a war game into a lesson about the nature of civilization itself. The human team shared knowing looks. This had never been about winning a war simulation. It had been about demonstrating why humanity, despite its relatively recent arrival on the galactic stage, had earned its reputation as the most dangerous, and perhaps the most insightful species in known space. The aftermath of the simulation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Military Academy. In the Grand Amphitheater, where moments ago the most sophisticated wargame in known space had been brought to an unprecedented conclusion, species from across the cosmos were experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis. Commander Aristrix stood before the assembled crowd, his scales shifting through colors that indicated deep philosophical disturbance. In all my years of military instruction, I have never witnessed such a fundamental challenge to our understanding of warfare. Maya, Damien, and Nick stood at attention, their posture relaxed but professional. Behind them, the holographic display still showed their transformed galaxy, not conquered but evolved. Perhaps Admiral Crixa pulsed thoughtfully, her bioluminescence creating patterns of scholarly interest. We have been asking the wrong questions all along. We designed this simulation to test military prowess, but these humans have demonstrated something far more profound. Damien's cybernetic eye whirred as he addressed the chamber. Military victory is temporary. Cultural victory is permanent. We simply applied the lessons of Earth's history on a galactic scale. The archived footage of the simulation was already being transmitted to military academies across the galaxy. Analysts would spend years studying how 3 human cadets had transformed a wargame into a lesson about civilization itself. You must understand, Maya explained to the still stunned audience, that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our physical capabilities. It's our adaptability, our ability to transform challenges into opportunities. Nick stepped forward, that augmented vocals carrying across the chamber with perfect clarity. On Earth, we learned that the most effective way to end a conflict isn't to defeat your opponent, but to make them your ally. We didn't just apply military strategy. We applied sociology, psychology, economics, and evolutionary theory. The alien instructors huddled together, their various appendages and sensory organs engaged in intense discussion. Finally, Commander Aristrix turned to address the human team. "Cadets," he announced, his scales settling into a formal pattern, "you have not merely won this simulation. You have fundamentally altered our understanding of what victory means. The implications for galactic military doctrine are significant." Admiral Crix's form rippled with agreement. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered our approach to military education. The humans have shown us that true strategic mastery extends far beyond the traditional boundaries of warfare. Maya shared a knowing look with her teammates before responding. "With respect, Admiral, that was precisely our point. In an interconnected galaxy, traditional military thinking is obsolete. The real challenge isn't winning conflicts, it's transcending the need for them." The simulation data continued to scroll across the displays, showing how their manufactured crisis had evolved into genuine cooperation, how forced compliance had transformed into willing participation. They had created a system that didn't just maintain peace, it made peace the most advantageous option for everyone involved. The Centennial simulation was designed to test our ability to wage war, Nix concluded, that a voice carrying a hint of irony. Instead, we used it to demonstrate why war itself might be the least efficient path to victory. As the chamber erupted in discussion, with representatives from dozens of species debating the implications of what they had witnessed, the human team stood quietly confident. They had done more than win a game. They had planted the seeds of a new way of thinking about conflict and cooperation in the galaxy. Commander Aristrix's scales finally settled into a color that indicated acceptance mixed with admiration. "I believe," he announced to the chamber, "that we have witnessed something historic today. The question is no longer how to win a war, but how to make war itself obsolete." That, Maya replied with a slight smile, is exactly what humanity has been trying to tell you all along. Sometimes the best way to win is to change the game entirely. As the Academy's historians rushed to document this unprecedented event, the human cadets gathered their data drives, ready to return to their quarters. They had demonstrated why humanity, despite being newcomers to the galactic stage, had earned both fear and respect from the oldest spacefaring civilizations. After all, what could be more terrifying, or more promising, than a species that could transform your entire civilization while convincing you it was your own idea?